Hi friends, and welcome to my continuing series on the struggle of seeking my Savior. And today I'm going to be talking about the prison of pride. When I mention the word pride, is there somebody that immediately pops up into your mind? Do you think of someone in your family, like a parent, a sibling? Could it be your spouse, even a child? Could it be your boss or a colleague at work? Or dare I say, could it be a pastor or somebody in leadership at your church? Do you think of yourself as being a prideful person? And how does pride affect us? Well, we're going to cover all of that in today's video. Hello and welcome to Megan's Search for Meaning. I'm Megan, and I'm a state board certified and nationally licensed addictions counselor, and I'm a Christian. And this is a place where we come together to talk about hard things and merge the fields of therapy and theology to find healing and joy in the journey. The problem of pride. Pride is defined as being conceited, arrogant, or acting with superiority. And it's based on us being self-centered, which leads to destruction, especially in our relationships. Pride, interestingly enough, is actually shame-driven and comes from a place where we feel like we do not have enough self-worth. So what happens when we feel that way is we tend to, as a defense mechanism, focus on somebody else. We tend to focus on their flaws, focus on the things that maybe they do that annoy us or even that they do wrong. And we hyper focus on that rather than focusing on the issues or the things within ourselves that need to be addressed. Pride prevents us from being vulnerable with others. It actually divides us and separates us. And it is a factor in every divorce, war, church split, or business split, or even as simple as an argument. Pride can be found in all of those types of situations. Pride prevents healing in our hearts and in our minds because there's no space for us to be thinking about what was my role in this situation? Where do I have conviction about being able to say I'm sorry about something? How can I work towards reconciliation? And how can I have humility to be able to go to that person or to address this situation so that we can try and fix it? When we're prideful and we're struggling with our self-worth, there's no room in our minds to be able to work through that. Pride makes us an adversary towards the other people that we're interacting with, and it can even make us an adversary to God. So the question is, where does this pride come from? Today's anchor verse comes from Matthew 16, verses 21 through 23. And it says, "From then on, Jesus began to point out to his disciples that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders, chiefs, priests, and scribes, be killed, and be raised on the third day." Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Oh no, Lord, this will never happen to you." Jesus turned and told Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me because you're not thinking about God's concerns, but human concerns." Peter was very passionate about Jesus, but even with that passion, he was very prideful, he was very impulsive, he was immature, and he was inconsistent. And this facet of Peter is shown all throughout the Gospels. And honestly, that's why I love his story, because his story is so personal to all of us, because we are all that way at certain times. And sometimes we're all that way all the time, if we're being honest. And what's happening here is that there's a conflict of ideas. You see, this is during the Roman Empire. The city of Jerusalem, the nation of Israel, has been conquered by the Roman Empire. And this isn't just like the Roman Empire in terms of like reading on a page in the Bible or even in a history textbook. You have to remember, this is the height of the Roman Empire. This is like when Rome is at its best. There is no defeating Rome at this point in time in history. And Israel has been conquered by them. And so the people of Israel believed that the Messiah that had been promised to them was coming as a military leader, as a political leader. That person would overthrow Rome and would free Israel and have their own kingdom like they did under King David or King Solomon. That's what they believed the Messiah to be. And so when Jesus shows up and tells them, hey, I'm going to be honest with you, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to go to Jerusalem, a whole bunch of drama is going to happen, I'm going to get killed, but don't worry because I'm going to get raised on the third day. That is a totally different viewpoint, a totally different worldview even than what Peter and the disciples and all of the people of Israel had. And so imagine Peter having this mindset, like, you're a political leader, you're going to overthrow Rome, and I've seen you do these miracles, so I know that you're the Messiah and you're going to do this. And then Jesus says, hey, by the way, I'm going to go and I'm going to die. Peter's like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? That's not going to happen on my watch, because that's not what the Messiah is supposed to do. And so there's this conflict between Peter's idea and the actual reason and the actual reality of who Jesus is and what he came to do. And so the question to ask is, do you sometimes think that your way is better than God's way? I think if we were honest in answering that question, the answer would be yes. Just like everything in our lives and in our society, the struggles we have, the issues and problems that we're wrestling with, it can all be traced back to Genesis chapter 3. And if you've ever heard me teach before, you will know that that is something I always come back to, is Genesis chapter 3. Because what happened to Eve is happening to Peter in this text, and what has happened to Peter happens to us. And that is the question that we begin to entertain in our minds. And sometimes it's packaged differently. It's not as blatant as it was in Genesis 3, but the heart of the question is there. And it is, did God really say? If you think about whatever it is that we wrestle with when it comes to pride, try and put yourself in that situation with that question. Did God really say that if I use marijuana, it's potentially harmful to me? Did God really say that he wasn't going to answer my prayer? I thought he was faithful. Did God really say that I couldn't eat the fruit in the garden? Did God really say that he was going to go to Jerusalem and that he was going to die instead of overthrow the Roman Empire? Did God really say? The cycle of pride starts when we challenge what God says and we challenge his ways. And it's important to know that questioning is not the same as challenging, and that's a video for a different time. When I speak of challenge, what I'm talking about is us moving away from God. And we have this attitude and we're entertaining this thoughts of, did God really say, fill in the blank? And then we turn away from him. And when we encounter him, we tell him with our hearts, with our attitudes, with our behaviors, or even with our words, that he is wrong. We can get caught in this cycle of going around and around with God. And maybe the issue is, I don't trust God. I don't believe what he said to be true. Maybe the issue is that I don't feel like God has been faithful to me. Maybe the issue that we're wrestling with is I don't feel seen by God. But whatever it is, there could be a million different reasons that I could list. But whatever it is for each of us, we get in that cycle of, we entertain that thought of, did God really say he was going to be faithful? Because I don't think he's been faithful in my life. And then we move towards this section where we feel all of the feelings, right? Anger, frustration, sadness, confusion. We feel betrayed. We're questioning why. And then that moves us to actually challenge God to say, I don't believe that you're who you say you are. I don't believe your word is true. I don't believe you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And then that moves us away from God. And then we can get stuck in that cycle again and again and again. And when that happens, we begin to feel shame, we begin to feel guilt, and then that just fuels our lack of self-worth, because our identity, whether we want to admit it or not, comes from who God says that we are. And when we feel the shame, we feel like we have to hide, just like Adam and Eve did back in Genesis 3. But instead of actually addressing what's going on inside of our hearts and inside of our minds, we continue running and we continue fueling ourselves in this cycle. So the question becomes, how do I get out of this prison of pride? Here are some points to ponder. If you find yourself stuck in this cycle of pride, try these tips to see if they help you. The first one is to recognize and admit that you have an issue or root of pride in your heart. It may not be in every single area, but it might be in a particular area. For example, one thing that I can have a root of pride with my self-worth because of things that I've experienced throughout my life is when my husband gives me feedback about things. I can take that very personally and I can become very defensive. And I don't want to listen to what it is that he has to say. And I'm not hearing it from a logical standpoint. I'm hearing it from, I'm being attacked. And that causes a lot of tension between us and in our marriage. And that causes him to not want to be honest with me or to talk with me about things that are important because he knows how I'm going to respond. And I would like to believe that I've made some progress in this area throughout our 14 years of marriage, but it still rears its ugly head from time to time, and it's something that I have to recognize, and I have to admit, and I have to keep working on. So one of those ways that we can work on it is by praying about it. We can journal about it, and we can talk about our issues and our concerns with people that we trust. The second thing that we can do, and this is something that pops up all the time if you've watched some of my other videos, is you can express gratitude. When we become thankful and we start showing gratitude for the things we have, or the things that we're experiencing, or the things that we're learning, we're able to start focusing on what God has given us, the blessings He has given us, rather than focusing on the flaws and the issues of other people. We're able to kind of put those spiritual blinders on, and it becomes just between me and God rather than between me and the whole world. The third thing that we can do is we can practice service. When I'm purposely going out and serving somebody else, it allows me to see the good and to be a part of the good that's in this world. And it doesn't have to be a huge act of service. You don't have to go and save somebody's life, although if that happens, that's awesome and congratulations. But it could be something as simple as holding the door open for a mom that is bringing her kids into the grocery store. It could be bringing your parents dinner on a work night and just stopping by to say hello and that you love them. It could be bringing your spouse flowers or bringing your husband his favorite type of beef jerky. It could be taking your kid somewhere and let's say your toddler needs to have their shoe tied, and you bend down and you help them tie their shoe without a huff, without frustration, but just, I love you, let me help you, and let's get this done. So those are all acts of service, and the reality is that those little tiny acts of service are what become the big moments in our life. I think a lot of times we get caught in that trap of like, if I don't do something huge, then it's not worth anything. But all of those little things add up. And they add up to our lives, and they add up to really big things. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking of acts of service. And then the fourth and final thing is my favorite, and that's laugh at yourself. If you can come to a place where you're laughing at yourself, It means that you're coming to a place of an acceptance of yourself. And one of the things that I wanted to share with that is, this is super embarrassing, and I don't know why I'm sharing it with the world on YouTube, but here we go. Is sometimes when I'm talking with somebody, I can just get really excited and I will totally have like spit fall out of my mouth. And I hope I'm not the only person in the world that has this happen, but it seems to happen to me on a not regular basis, but definitely more than I would like to admit. And I used to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And I get so embarrassed and like I wouldn't want to talk to people or interact with people, but that's not who I am. And now I've come to a place where when it happens, I just simply laugh and say, I just got so excited to talk to you. Can you tell? And the other person laughs and we move on, and it's not that big of a deal. A second thing that I do is, if you've ever seen me teach at my church, I always cry. Every single sermon I will cry. And I used to be ashamed of that. I used to think that feeling my emotions or having that empathy to feel others' emotions was a flaw. And now I've realized that and accepted that it's not something that is bad or wrong. It's just how I'm wired. And so if you hear me teach, you will always hear me say when I start crying, tears are okay, but snot is not. And I laugh and the audience laughs, and we're able to move on with the teaching. And so finding those things that you can laugh at yourself makes us realize that we're human and we all have things, we all have struggles, and we're all a lot more similar than we would like to believe. All right, friends. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this devotional encouraged and challenged you. I would love to hear how in the comments, and I would love to hear what you think about our new format. My husband and I, we are learning and growing, and we want to provide a channel and a place for you that is encouraging and a blessing. So please give us your feedback. I promise I won't lash out pridefully towards you if that happens, but we would love to have your feedback on this new format, and we would love to know your thoughts on anything that you're wrestling with pride. If you found this video encouraging and you liked this content, I would love for you to like, I would love for you to subscribe, share, and leave me a comment so that we can keep giving you lots more things that the Lord is putting on my heart to share. So until next time, let's find joy in the journey, and I'll see you then. Bye.